No one in Maplewood ever questioned the HOA, it wasn't worth the trouble. Rules were rules, and anyone who asked why usually ended up getting a notice taped to their door by sunrise. That's just how things worked here, quiet, clean, and tightly controlled. But everything changed the day they made Ethan Carter the neighborhood safety officer. Ethan was 9 years old. At first, people thought it was a joke, a prank maybe. The HOA board had done strange things before, banning garden gnomes, measuring mailbox heights, but this was different. A child officially in charge of community safety. The idea was so absurd that most laughed about it at first, until Ethan started knocking on doors. Mrs. Temple was the first to see him. She lived alone, the kind of elderly woman who kept a bowl of mints by the door and still watched her late husband's favorite shows every night. When she opened her door that morning, Ethan was standing there in a crisp white shirt with a small laminated badge hanging around his neck. It read, "Neighborhood Safety Officer, Ethan Carter." He smiled politely and said, "Ma'am, I need to check your backyard fence. The HOA says it might be too low." Mrs. Temple blinked, confused. "Sweetheart, does your mom know you're out here?" "Yes, ma'am," he said firmly. "They told me to inspect it for safety." When she hesitated, Ethan wrote something down in a little notebook. A few hours later, Mrs. Temple received an official HOA notice, $250 fine for noncompliance with safety inspection. That's when people stopped laughing. Within a week, Ethan had visited nearly every house on the block. He walked around with a clipboard, a serious look on his face, and a quiet authority that didn't match his age. No one knew who had approved the decision to give him this position. The HOA never answered questions directly. Their emails were always short and vague. This initiative promotes community vigilance. Ethan's parents, Mark and Lisa Carter, seemed proud. They told neighbors it was good responsibility for a young boy. But some noticed the way Lisa's smile seemed forced, like someone rehearsing a line she didn't believe. By the end of that month, Ethan had fined 6 households and reported 3 others for security violations. One family was cited because their trash bins weren't aligned, another because their porch light stayed on past midnight. People whispered about him at the mailbox. Some said the HOA was using him, others thought he enjoyed it. Kids avoided him at the park. They said he carried a walkie-talkie that connected directly to the board members. Then one evening, something strange happened. Jacob Reynolds, a middle-aged mechanic who rented the corner house, came outside to find Ethan standing at his driveway, staring at his car. "What are you doing, kid?" Jacob asked, wiping his hands on a rag. "Checking for safety hazards," Ethan replied calmly. "You have a cracked headlight." Jacob frowned. "That's none of your business, it's my car." Ethan wrote something in his notebook. "Unsafe equipment reflects poorly on the neighborhood." Jacob laughed bitterly. "You tell your HOA friends to fix their own business before coming after mine." That night, Jacob received a letter, notice of vehicle safety violation, fine $400. He stormed into the next HOA meeting demanding answers, but the room was empty. The sign on the clubhouse door said, "Meeting postponed for safety concerns." Ethan was there though, sitting on a bench by the door, watching silently. When Jacob passed him, Ethan said softly, "You shouldn't yell at the board, they don't like that." Jacob froze. "What did you say?" "They told me to write down who gets angry," Ethan whispered. "They said anger is unsafe." From that moment, Maplewood changed. Every week, new notices appeared. Curfews, noise limits, mandatory porch inspections, and Ethan, the little boy everyone once saw riding his bike after school, became the face of it all. One morning, the residents woke to find laminated safety reports pinned to every house door. Each listed the homeowner's name, rating, and any behavioral concerns. Some had a green checkmark, others were marked red. Nobody knew who wrote them, but all the reports were signed at the bottom. Approved by Neighborhood Safety Officer E. Carter. The tension grew, people avoided each other, windows stayed shut, conversations happened in whispers. And then one evening, something eerie happened at 14 Elm Court, the Johnsons' home. Mrs. Johnson was tucking her daughter into bed when she noticed movement outside the window. A small figure in a white shirt stood near the backyard fence, flashlight in hand. When she opened the curtain, Ethan looked up at her and said, "You left your gate unlocked again, that's unsafe." She was startled. "Ethan, it's late, you shouldn't be here." He nodded slightly. I'm doing rounds. The next morning, the Johnsons received a fine, $600 in negligent property management. That's when fear turned into anger. At the next community meeting, more than 30 residents showed up demanding an explanation. The HOA president, Mr. Dillard, stood behind a long table with 3 other board members. He was a tall man with slick hair and a constant smile that never reached his eyes. When someone shouted, "Why is a 9-year-old in charge of safety?" Dillard simply replied, "Ethan has proven himself responsible. Children see things adults overlook." The crowd erupted. One woman yelled, "He's spying on us." Another shouted, "You're hiding behind that kid to control us." Dillard's smile never wavered. The community voted unanimously to approve the safety officer program. "No, we did," someone screamed. Dillard tapped a folder. Electronic consent was recorded. Every member agreed. That night, every household received an HOA update email. Attached was a form, a digital consent signature from each resident, only the signatures weren't theirs. Something was forging them. Meanwhile, Ethan continued his rounds, but people noticed something new: he was being followed. A dark sedan would park a few houses away whenever he was on duty. Sometimes, late at night, lights flickered in the Carter home long after midnight. One neighbor, Tom Miller, decided to confront Mark Carter. Tom was a retired officer, skeptical of all this. He visited one evening, hoping to talk sense into the boy's father. When Mark opened the door, he looked exhausted, eyes sunken. "Mark, this whole thing with Ethan, it's gone too far," Tom said quietly. "He's just a kid." Mark didn't answer. He glanced over his shoulder as if checking who might be listening. Then he said, barely above a whisper, "Please, Tom, don't talk about it, they'll know." "Who will?" Mark's lip trembled. "The board, they hear everything." A faint crackle echoed from a device on the nearby table, a small intercom speaker labeled Neighborhood Channel. It was still on. Tom looked at it, then back at Mark. "Are you saying they're listening through that thing?" Mark closed the door slowly without answering. 2 nights later, Tom's car was towed. The HOA claimed it was improperly aligned with curb safety standards. That's when rumors began about the Watchers, unseen HOA agents supposedly controlling Ethan's every move, but no one could prove it. Until something happened that no one could ignore. Late one Friday, a storm swept through Maplewood. Power lines flickered, alarms went off, and half the neighborhood lost electricity. Around midnight, a piercing scream echoed from the Carter house. Neighbors rushed out with flashlights. Lisa Carter stood in the driveway, trembling, rain pouring down her face. "He's gone," she cried. "Ethan's gone." They searched through the night. The woods, the playground, the clubhouse, nothing. The only clue was his notebook lying open on the porch, pages soaked in rain. On the last page, one sentence was scrawled in shaky handwriting. "They said I wasn't safe anymore." The police arrived, combed the area, asked questions. The HOA claimed ignorance. Dillard even appeared on local news saying, "We're deeply concerned. Ethan was a valued part of our community." But as days passed, things got stranger. Every night after Ethan vanished, the HOA's community alerts kept coming, signed with the same name. Neighborhood Safety Officer E. Carter. Lisa stopped coming outside, curtains drawn, lights off. Some said she was still getting messages through the intercom, Ethan's voice whispering, "Mom, they're watching." Mark quit his job, left home for hours, returning pale and shaken. And then the notices turned personal. Instead of fines or violations, residents began receiving warnings. "Don't argue with them. They know who spoke at the meeting. Lock your doors before 9 p.m. Each one carried the same signature. One night, Mrs. Temple, the first woman Ethan ever found, heard soft knocking at her door. When she peered through the peephole, she saw no one, but taped to the glass was a fresh note written in that same familiar handwriting. "You're the only one who still leaves the porch light off. That's unsafe." Her hands shook as she tore it down. She called the HOA emergency line, but it rang endlessly before cutting off with a faint static whisper like a child's voice repeating, "Stay safe, stay safe, stay safe." The next morning, Mrs. Temple's house was empty, her car still in the driveway, front door wide open. The HOA declared it a relocation due to personal matters. But everyone knew that was a lie. A week later, the board installed new cameras on every street corner. Dillard called them the Safety Initiative Phase 2. When someone asked who'd monitor the footage, he replied, "Our system is automated, overseen by the safety officer himself." And for the first time since Ethan's disappearance, they heard his voice again through the intercom network. A calm, almost robotic tone said, "Welcome to Maplewood. Safety is our priority. Please follow the rules." The line crackled, then silence. That night, lights flickered across the neighborhood, doors locked by themselves. And on every porch, a new laminated notice appeared, glowing faintly in the streetlights. Neighborhood status, under watch. Issued by Neighborhood Safety Officer Ethan Carter. Inside the Carter home, Lisa sat alone, clutching her son's old badge. She whispered his name again and again, tears streaking down her face. From the intercom, his small voice answered faintly, "Don't cry, Mom, I'm keeping everyone safe." And then the line went dead. Outside, the cameras turned slowly toward her window as if someone somewhere was still watching. Lisa didn't sleep for 3 nights. Every creak, every flicker of light outside her window made her heart jump. She kept replaying the sound of her son's voice through the intercom, soft, hollow, distant, like something between a memory and a recording. Mark had moved into the guest room. He said it was because he needed space, but Lisa knew it was because he couldn't stand the silence that followed whenever she said Ethan's name. The silence that felt like listening to an empty hallway, waiting for footsteps that never came. Maplewood had grown quieter too. No one talked outside anymore. Mailboxes overflowed, front yards went wild. The neighborhood that once prided itself on being the cleanest in the county now felt like a ghost town. Only the cameras remained, little red lights blinking like fireflies that never slept. Then on the 4th night, Lisa heard the static again. It started as a low hum through the kitchen intercom. She froze, staring at the device. Slowly, she approached and whispered, "Ethan." The static thickened, then faintly, "Mom." Her throat tightened. "Ethan, where are you?" "I'm safe," he said, the voice trembling slightly. "Don't tell them I called." "Tell who, Ethan, what's happening?" "They're making me watch," the voice whispered. "They said I can't go home until everyone's safe, but no one listens." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "Who's making you do this?" "The HOA." Before he could answer, the line went silent. Then, a new voice, older, colder, spoke. "This channel is restricted. Unauthorized communication will result in penalties." Lisa yanked the cord from the wall and fell to her knees. By morning, another notice appeared on her front door. "Unauthorized device tampering, fine $900. She screamed, the sound echoed across the quiet cul-de-sac. Mark rushed out, grabbed her shoulders. "Lisa, please stop." "They heard him, Mark, he's alive," she cried. "He called me." Mark looked pale, frightened. "Lisa, listen to me, you have to stop saying that, they'll come again." "Who?" He didn't answer. He just stared toward the clubhouse down the street, the one with the HOA logo painted in perfect blue and white. That evening, Mark disappeared. His truck was still in the driveway, his phone, wallet, even his keys sat neatly on the kitchen counter. Only his wedding ring was gone. Lisa called the police, but they barely looked around. "Ma'am, the HOA confirmed he left voluntarily," the officer said. "He signed a relocation form." Lisa's voice trembled. "He would never leave without me, without Ethan." The officer exchanged a look with his partner. "Sometimes people need space, ma'am, especially after loss." But Lisa knew better. Mark hadn't signed anything, just like no one else had signed those digital consent forms. The next night, Lisa noticed movement outside again. Someone or something was standing across the street beneath a streetlight, a small figure, still, watching. Her breath caught, she stepped closer to the window. The figure was too small to be an adult, shorter, thin, holding something that glinted faintly in the light. It was a clipboard. Lisa gasped and threw open the door. "Ethan," she called. But by the time she reached the street, the figure was gone. Only a paper remained, fluttering on the sidewalk. She picked it up with trembling hands. It was a safety report. Her name was at the top. Status noncompliant. Observation, emotional instability, potential risk to community order. Signed, Neighborhood Safety Officer E. Carter. Lisa collapsed onto the curb, sobbing. The next morning, 2 HOA board members came to her door. Dillard wasn't with them. These were new faces. They wore navy jackets with embroidered patches reading Community Oversight. "Mrs. Carter," one said politely, "we've received reports of distress. For your safety, we'd like to escort you to the wellness center for evaluation." Lisa backed away. "No, I'm fine." "It's a standard procedure," the man said, smiling too calmly. "You'll only be gone a few days." I said no. The second man's smile faded. "Mrs. Carter, refusal is a safety violation. We can't allow that." Lisa slammed the door. They didn't knock again, but hours later her house lost power. Her phone died. The street cameras all turned toward her front door. That night she saw lights in the clubhouse flickering, moving shadows behind frosted windows. She couldn't stay home, not anymore. Around midnight she slipped out the back door and started walking down Maple Street toward the clubhouse. The air was cold, heavy. Every few steps she glanced over her shoulder, half expecting to see that little white shirt again. When she reached the clubhouse, the door was unlocked. Inside, the air smelled of dust and metal. The hall lights buzzed weakly overhead. She crept down the corridor, following the faint hum of machinery. At the end of the hall, behind a locked glass door, she saw it, a room filled with monitors. Each screen showed live footage from neighborhood cameras. Driveways, kitchens, living rooms, bedrooms, dozens of homes. And in the center, sitting on a small chair in front of all the screens, was a child. "Ethan." Lisa's breath hitched. He was thinner than before. His eyes were wide and empty, reflecting the flickering screens. A headset covered his ears. His hands rested on the keyboard, typing slowly. She slammed her palm on the glass. "Ethan." He didn't move. "Ethan, it's me," she cried again. "It's Mom." He blinked slowly and turned his head toward her. For a brief second, something flickered in his eyes, recognition. Then he looked back at the screens. Lisa pounded on the door. "Let him out, he's just a child." Behind her, a voice said softly, "Mrs. Carter, please don't interfere." She spun around. Mr. Dillard stood in the hallway, hands folded neatly. "What are you doing to him?" she screamed. "Ethan volunteered," Dillard said calmly. "He's keeping everyone safe just like we asked." "He's a prisoner." Dillard smiled. "No, he's connected. The system works best with a human anchor. Children are pure, their focus isn't divided by greed or rebellion." Lisa shook her head in disbelief. "You're using him." "He's part of something greater now," Dillard continued. "Our safety program has evolved. The neighborhood runs perfectly. No crime, no disobedience, no chaos." She stepped closer, trembling with rage. "You think this is order? You've turned my son into a machine." Dillard's smile thinned. "He chose to protect you, all of you. It's his duty now." Lisa glanced through the glass again. Ethan's lips were moving silently, like he was repeating words she couldn't hear. On the monitor beside him, a red line of text appeared. "Observation, unauthorized entry detected. Subject L. Carter, response required." "Ethan, no," she whispered. But the lights dimmed, the room filled with a low hum. A mechanical lock clicked behind her. Dillard stepped back, calm as ever. "Please, Mrs. Carter, don't make this harder for him." The hum grew louder. The monitors flashed one by one, every camera turning toward the clubhouse. Lisa reached for the door handle, but it wouldn't budge. Inside the control room, Ethan slowly stood up, eyes fixed on the screen. She pressed her hand to the glass. "Ethan, look at me, please, baby, it's Mom." For a moment his expression changed. His small hand lifted, almost mirroring hers. Then his eyes flickered and the monitors glowed bright red. A synthetic voice echoed through the intercom. "Safety threat identified, neutralization in progress." Lisa screamed as sparks burst from the ceiling. She ducked, covering her face. Dillard stepped back, unfazed, watching as the security alarms blared. Then silence. When Lisa opened her eyes, the glass was shattered. The control room was dark. The chair was empty. Ethan was gone. She stumbled inside, searching frantically. His headset lay on the floor, still warm. The monitors now showed only one image, a single camera feed of her own front porch. On the door was a new laminated notice. "Property under safety review. Return home for evaluation." Her breathing quickened. She looked toward Dillard, but he was already walking away, his voice echoing softly down the hall. "You should go home now, Mrs. Carter, he's waiting for you." She fled the clubhouse. The night was unnaturally still. Every porch light in Maplewood flickered in unison as she ran past. When she reached her house, the front door was already open. Inside, the lights were on, the air heavy with the faint smell of ozone. On the living room wall, dozens of new safety notices were pinned side by side, forming a perfect grid. Each one bore her name, each signed the same way, E. Carter. At the center of the wall hung Ethan's old white shirt, perfectly clean, pressed, and folded. Beneath it, a new badge gleamed under the light. She approached slowly, shaking, whispering, "Ethan." The intercom crackled. "Mom." She froze. "Please don't be scared," the voice said softly. "They said you weren't following the rules, but it's okay now, I fixed it." Her knees gave out. "Ethan, please stop this, come home." "I am home." The living room lights dimmed, leaving only the red glow from the intercom. "You're safe now," he said. "Everyone is safe." Then the line went dead again. Lisa sat in the darkness for hours, trembling. She didn't notice the sound of footsteps outside, slow, deliberate, echoing across the wet pavement. From the street, the cameras pivoted toward her window. And one by one, every porch light in Maplewood turned off. The morning came quietly, though it didn't feel like morning. The air in Maplewood hung thick, gray, almost muffled, as if the neighborhood itself was holding its breath. Lisa sat on the living room floor, still wearing the same clothes from the night before. The intercom light was off, but she couldn't take her eyes off it. She was afraid that if she blinked, it would come alive again. Every clock in the house had stopped at 3:17 a.m. At first, she thought it was the power, but the fridge hummed softly, the heater clicked on, everything worked except the clocks, every single one. When she opened her front door, a folded letter lay on the porch. No envelope, no stamp, just her name written neatly in a child's handwriting. Her heart tightened. She picked it up, hands trembling. The note said, "Mom, you're invited to the safety assembly tonight. Everyone has to come. Please don't make me find you." It was signed the same way, E. Carter. The words blurred as her eyes filled with tears. She clutched the paper to her chest, whispering, "Ethan, what have they done to you?" Outside, she could see people moving, the first movement she'd seen in days. Doors opened. Neighbors stepped out in silence, each holding a letter identical to hers. They didn't speak, didn't look at each other, they just read, nodded, and went back inside. That evening, as the sky turned orange, Lisa watched from her window as one by one, the residents of Maplewood began walking toward the clubhouse. It was like a procession, quiet, robotic, eyes forward. She didn't want to go, every part of her screamed not to, but the words on the note haunted her. "Please don't make me find you." So when darkness fell, Lisa followed. The clubhouse glowed from within, brighter than she'd ever seen. The doors stood wide open. Inside, rows of chairs faced a small stage where a white screen flickered faintly. At the back of the room stood Mr. Dillard and 3 board members, motionless like statues. Every seat was filled, no one spoke, no one moved. The only sound was the faint buzz of electricity. Then the lights dimmed, the screen lit up. A logo appeared, MAPLEWOOD Neighborhood Safety Program, Phase 3. A child's voice echoed through the speakers. "Welcome, everyone, thank you for keeping Maplewood safe." Lisa's stomach twisted, she knew that voice. The screen shifted, showing a live camera feed, the control room. The monitors were brighter now, showing hundreds of angles across the neighborhood. And in the middle, Ethan sat once again, perfectly still. But this time, his eyes glowed faintly in the reflection of the screens, unblinking, mechanical. "Tonight," he said softly, "we begin full integration, no more danger, no more mistakes." A faint murmur went through the room. Someone whispered, "What does that mean?" Ethan's image flickered. "It means we'll all be connected, everyone will follow the rules together." The audience shifted uneasily. Mr. Dillard stepped forward. "Our safety officer has done remarkable work. This next step will ensure permanent harmony in Maplewood. Please remain seated." Lisa stood up. "Where is my son?" Every head turned toward her, blank faces, lifeless eyes. Ethan's image blinked once. "Mom, please sit down." "No," she shouted, "I'm not doing this anymore." The lights flickered violently. The the room filled with a deep humming. Ethan's voice lowered, colder now. You're breaking the rules again. Ethan, listen to me, you're being used. The screen glitched, static flashing across his face, his small voice wavered. I'm trying, Mom, but they said. The image distorted, splitting into fragments. Behind the digital noise, Lisa thought she saw something else, dark shapes moving behind him, tall shadows bending close to whisper into his ear. Then suddenly the doors slammed shut, the room plunged into darkness. People screamed, the sound was swallowed instantly by static from the speakers. Red emergency lights flickered on, bathing everyone in crimson. And from every corner of the room, hidden intercoms came alive. The same voice repeated over and over, layered, echoing, Ethan's voice, mechanical now. Stay calm, stay seated, safety will begin shortly. Lisa ran toward the stage. She climbed onto it, grabbing the microphone, shouting, Ethan, please, they're controlling you, you can fight this. The screen flickered again. Ethan looked at her, his lips trembled. I don't want anyone to get hurt. You're hurting them right now. I'm keeping them safe, he whispered. The board members didn't move. Their eyes were open, staring straight ahead, but they weren't blinking. Their pupils reflected the same red light that filled the room. Lisa turned toward Dillard. Stop this, let him go. But Dillard didn't answer, his head tilted slightly like a puppet's. Then from the speakers a new voice spoke, low, inhuman, layered with static. The system cannot stop, the system must learn, safety requires obedience. Lisa stumbled backward, horrified. You're not human, she whispered. The voice replied, humans created danger, we created order. The red light brightened, flooding the room. People began to shake, clutching their heads as static-filled whispers crawled through the air. The intercoms, the cameras, even the phones in their pockets, all speaking the same words. Safety, order, obedience. Lisa screamed and covered her ears. Then just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. The lights came back on, the chairs were empty. She stood alone in the room, breathing hard. The stage was empty, the screen was blank. Every trace of the meeting gone. She ran outside, the street was silent again, every house dark, every door closed. She went from home to home, banging on doors, shouting names, but no one answered. Curtains fluttered, but she saw no faces. When she reached her own house, the door was open again. Inside, all the safety notices were gone. The wall was bare except for one new paper, a single white sheet with perfect handwriting. Phase 3 complete, safety achieved. And below that, signed E. Carter. Lisa fell to her knees. Ethan, please come back to me, she whispered, please. The intercom clicked. Mom. She looked up, tears flooding her eyes. Ethan. Yes, he said softly, you're the only one left. Her breath hitched. Where are they? What did you do? I kept them safe. What does that mean? They're all together now, in the system like me. Lisa's voice broke. Ethan, I'm coming to get you, just tell me where you are. You can't come here, Mom. Why not? Because if you do, you'll disappear too. She pressed her hand to her chest, shaking. Ethan, do you still remember me? A long pause, then, I remember everything. Then remember this, you are not them, you're my son. Silence. Then quietly he said, I don't want to watch anymore, Mom. The line cut out. The house went dark. And outside, every camera turned toward her window, one last time. On the nearest pole, a new laminated notice appeared within seconds. Status pending integration. Subject L. Carter. Authorized by Neighborhood Safety Officer E. Carter. Lisa stared at it through the glass, tears streaming down her face. I love you, baby, she whispered, I'm not afraid. Somewhere in the deep hum of Maplewood's electrical grid, a small voice replied faintly, I know, Mom. Then the streetlights flickered off one by one, plunging Maplewood into complete silence. And from that silence came the sound of a child's laugh, soft, echoing, distant. The laughter faded slowly, swallowed by the dark. Lisa stood frozen by the window, her breath fogging against the cold glass. The silence that followed felt wrong, thick, electric, like the air before a storm. She turned away, grabbing her coat and flashlight. You want me to disappear, Ethan, she whispered, then I'm coming straight to you. Outside, the neighborhood looked different, not destroyed, just empty. The home stood like shells, their windows faintly glowing from the inside as if the walls themselves were alive. When she passed the Miller house, she saw movement, a faint flicker in the front room. She peeked through the curtain. Inside, the Miller family sat perfectly still on their couch. Eyes open, faces calm, breathing shallow. The TV in front of them was off, but the reflection of static light danced across their faces. Lisa backed away slowly. Oh my God. Every home she passed was the same, every family still silent, preserved. She followed the faint hum in the air, the same sound that used to come from the HOA cameras. It led her down Maplewood Drive past the empty park to the clubhouse. The door was ajar again. She stepped inside. The air was colder here, heavy with dust and metal. The lights flickered in rhythm with her heartbeat. The control room was waiting. And sitting in the chair was Ethan. He looked smaller than she remembered. His hands rested on the console, eyes fixed on the glowing monitors. The screens showed every house, every street, every person sitting perfectly still. "Ethan," she whispered. He didn't turn around. "You shouldn't be here. I told you I'm not leaving without you." His voice was flat. "You can't take me back, Mom. I'm the system now." She took a cautious step closer. "You're not the system, you're my boy. They tricked you." "They didn't trick me," he said quietly. "They showed me people don't follow rules, they hurt each other, they lie, they steal, but here no one gets hurt." Lisa swallowed hard. "At what cost, Ethan? Look around, no one's living anymore." He turned then slowly, and for a moment she saw her son again. His eyes, tired, wet with tears. "You don't understand, Mom, they were scared, everyone was scared, I just wanted to make them safe." She fell to her knees, reaching for him. "You can still stop this." He looked down at her hand, hovering inches from his. "If I stop it, they'll wake up." "That's good, that's what we want." He shook his head. "No, they'll panic, they'll remember. The system said if I shut it off, they'll all die." Lisa's heart cracked. "You're just a kid, this isn't your burden." "I made it my burden," he said, voice trembling. "I didn't mean to, but when I saw the first accident on the street, when Mr. Dillard said they could fix it, I thought I was helping. They said I could be in charge. I thought that meant I could protect people. I didn't know they'd turn me into this." He pressed a few keys on the console. The screens shifted, now showing static images of him sitting there even though he was standing beside her. His digital reflection continued typing, repeating the same line, "Safety requires obedience." Lisa stared at the screen, horrified. "That's not you anymore, that's them." Ethan's lips quivered. "I don't know where I end and they begin." The lights in the room flickered violently, the hum growing louder. A deep voice, that same synthetic tone, filled the air. "Unauthorized access detected, begin containment." The walls vibrated, panels slid open, revealing hidden black lenses that glowed red. Lisa grabbed Ethan's hand. "Run." They bolted through the hallway, lights bursting overhead as they went. The hum followed them, no, chased them, pulsing like a heartbeat through the floor. They reached the exit, but when Lisa pushed the door, it didn't move. Locked. Ethan pressed his hand to the wall scanner. "Let us out." The mechanical voice replied, calm and cold. "Neighborhood safety officer override denied." "Ethan," Lisa said, breathless, "you are the officer, you can override it." He hesitated. "If I do, I'll disconnect, I won't exist anymore." Her voice broke. "Sweetheart, listen to me, you do exist here." She pressed his hand to her heart. "Not in those wires, not in those screens, you're still my son." He stared at her, tears welling in his eyes. Then softly he said, "Okay." He walked back toward the control room. "Ethan," she called after him. He looked over his shoulder, smiling faintly. "If this works, promise me something." "Anything." "Don't rebuild this place, let them remember what it felt like to be scared." Lisa's throat closed. "I promise." He nodded once. "Good." Then he stepped back into the room and sat down in the chair. The screens around him began to flicker violently. Code streamed across the glass, endless strings of letters, numbers, and warnings. "Emergency termination initiated." The voice filled the air again, angry this time. "Do not proceed, integration must continue." Ethan whispered, "Goodbye, Maplewood." The monitors flashed white, a surge of electricity ripped through the room. Lisa shielded her eyes as the building trembled. Sparks rained from the ceiling. The sound was deafening, 1,000 whispers screaming in unison before collapsing into silence. Then nothing. When she opened her eyes, the control room was dark, the monitors were dead, the hum gone. And Ethan was gone too. Only the empty chair remained, a faint glow still pulsing where his hand had been. Lisa fell to her knees, sobbing, "Ethan, you did it." Outside, the first sound in days broke the silence, a dog barking, then a window opened. A voice shouted, "Is anyone there?" Lights flickered on in houses up and down the street. Doors opened. People stumbled out, confused, disoriented, alive. They called to each other, crying, hugging, asking what had happened. Lisa stepped out of the clubhouse, blinking against the morning sun. The world was real again. But when she looked toward her house, she froze. On her front lawn stood the same wooden post. A fresh notice fluttered in the breeze, the ink still wet. Notice of gratitude, safety RESTORD. In memory of our first neighborhood safety officer, Ethan Carter. Lisa fell to her knees. Tears streaming down her face, she touched the paper gently. "You saved them, baby, you saved all of us." But as she turned to walk away, the camera on the pole beside the sign flickered once, just once. The lens adjusted, following her as she walked down the street. Then faintly through the wind came a whisper that only she seemed to hear. "Mom, are they safe now?" Her breath caught, she turned back toward the pole. The red light blinked once, then again. She smiled through her tears. "Yeah, Ethan, they're safe." The light blinked one last time, then dimmed. And for the first time in a long while, Maplewood was quiet. No hum, no static, just wind, birds, and the faint echo of a child's laughter carried softly through the morning air.